I call this meeting of the Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees to order. I want to welcome Rebecca Smith for her third time here. So welcome back, and hopefully if you have anything to say, please join in. Okay. I'd also like to, with this being Veterans Day, if there are any veterans present, please stand. Well, even though we don't have anyone stay, we do have someone over here. Yes.
No, I couldn't hear you. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. If we have any veterans present, please stand. Thank you for your service. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll move forward with Education Corner.
All right. So earlier this year during our Education Corner, we discussed state metrics like growth, equity, and achievement. And I provided some sports analogies to better help you understand those topics. So if you need some clarification on what we're going to talk about tonight, please refer back to those because it's about the simplest way to explain it possible. And it's a very complicated subject. But tonight we wanted to talk a little bit more. We've had a lot of information released about YTOP scores and where the district stands, and we wanted to talk a little bit more about that to help your understanding. So we are working on a way to post some of this additional information to the district website, the stuff that we covered during Education Corner, so that if you want to go back and readily access it, you're able to. So let's talk about YTOP scores and how it works in our district. So YTOP scores are essentially they're broken up by grade levels per building, but here in our district, we have these feed schools. So all of our elementary schools, our K-3 schools, will report to Pilot or Eastside as one of their feed schools. YTOP summative is only available for grades 3 through 10, so you don't have them kinder through second. And as I mentioned, those K-3 buildings use the third grade scores for building use. However, those summative growth scores, meaning the ones that we see or you recently saw in the media, are where those students go for their fourth grade year. So if more than one K-3 school feeds into a fourth grade program, all of the K-3 buildings will receive the same fourth grade summative score. So this is true for North Park, Sage, and Stagecoach. They feed Pilot, and Desert View and Walnut feed Eastside. So the scores that you guys saw were not necessarily reflective of each of those elementaries, but how the cumulative students did as a whole feeding into that school. So I wanted to provide you one example question to better understand YTOP scores as we, the public, see them reported. And the question is this: does 55% proficiency mean that 45% of our students are failing in a content area? And the answer is no. You need to look at other metrics, growth being one of the most important when we're looking at measuring student success. So it's probably one of the most confusing and misunderstood parts of this process. A school can be rated as not proficient, yet it could have tremendous amounts of growth for their students. Ultimately, this growth per student, in my opinion, is more important to understand than the school's overall rating, because it is this number that shows whether or not our curriculum changes and our programs are actually being successful and meeting the needs of our students. A student growth percentile describes a student's growth compared to their peers with similar prior test scores. That's the flower analogy I provided last year, where we want to compare roses to roses, tulips to tulips, but you don't want to compare a rose to a tulip. So you have to look at student growth compared to other students at that same level. Furthermore, when it comes to YTOP, we need to understand that we cannot look at this data as a solitary year. In other words, we have to look at the multi-year impacts to see where we're trending. Are we trending positively or negatively over time, not just the scores for the 1 year? Remember that assessment results show a single point in time, and there are many variables that can impact the outcome on that particular day. This data should always be combined with local and classroom data and context to make building or district decisions. In other words, we can't just look at a single score and say, we're going to make changes and shift to this. We need to see what else is going on at that school. So Zach has up on the screen a website that is available to everybody in the public, and you'll be surprising how useful this website is. This is wyomingmeasuresup.com, and you can actually go down to this and select our district as well as a school if you want to look at school-specific scores. And the amount of information that's available on these is just extraordinary. It basically breaks it down by socioeconomic factors. It breaks it down by demographics, and it really shows us at that school, where are we needing to improve? Is it with our EL students? Is it with our special ed students? Is it with the general population? Where do we need to focus our resources and efforts? But I would highly suggest, naturally the website's not going to load, but I'd highly suggest that you take a look at that, because it's very indicative, and you can see that maybe Pilot Butte, and this is a hypothetical example, but maybe Pilot Butte is showing that we're not proficient. But if you break it down and go to the individual feeder school that is feeding into that, maybe they are proficient at that third grade level. And it's data like that that's very important to understand. So Zach, you might have selected the district as a whole, but maybe you can choose a specific school in the district or something and bring that up. My whole point in this is not an excuse. It's purely meant to enlighten the community so that you can go get more information and be more educated. The bottom line is, do we have more work to do? Absolutely. Do we have improvement to be made? Absolutely. But there's a lot of refreshing information out there that shows just how well we're doing. And I even have a page here that Dr. Libby shared where we're looking at Desert View specifically. And if you look here, they're looking at the growth metric, and all these numbers in green, other than the one here in red, which is very small, is showing that we're improving in almost all areas there at Desert View, regardless of that feeder school rating that they had. So it's very important to understand and really dig into that data a little bit more. You can also see things like cost per student or percentage of certified versus experienced staff. Experienced versus non-experienced. So they say 3 years or less is non-experienced. So maybe that school has a lot of non-experienced teachers or whatever. It's all broken down on this website. But the whole purpose of this education corner is simply to inform. I suggest that we educate ourselves when we're looking at our YTOP scores so that we understand how we can individually and as a community see what changes that we need to be making as a district. Remember that YTOP is a tool that tells us which content areas our district or building should be focusing on. Things like curriculum review, interventions, professional development, instructional strategy adjustments. So that's something I think everybody should spend a little time on. One last thing, there's another website I want to point you guys towards, and we will post this. But this is to help you understand how we as a district determine our next steps. And if you want to search it out, it's wyoming.gov. It's the how to use the summative assessment data. So it basically walks you through what are our next steps. What are we going to do with this data, and how are we going to make improvements? Please look at that. And lastly, I want to leave you with this. Believe it or not, there is a website you can go to, wyoassessment.org. In the students and family section, you can go take a practice test with your kiddos so that you see exactly what the YTOP test is, because one of the biggest struggles that I think our students have is simply understanding how to take the test and not the content of the test. They can understand the content, but if they can't navigate the test or they have problems getting through the test, they might receive a score that's not reflective of their actual abilities. So please educate yourself. Please go check out these resources. They're available to everybody, and I think they'll make a huge difference in us moving forward as a district. Thanks.
Thanks, Cole. Okay, moving on to D, superintendent highlights. Dr. Libby.
Thank you. I want to first thank Trustee Wright for sharing that information. about the test scores. There are a lot of exciting things that are occurring in the building, and they just don't necessarily hit the newspaper around the growth and the opportunities that we're sharing with our kids. A few quick highlights here. We always try to give a student number highlight. October, we were at 4981. November, 4973, so we're down 8 kids. We have coming up, East Side has their Kindness Garden dedication November 13th at 2 p.m. You're all welcome to come over for that. That's going to be an awesome presentation. Also wanted to share that we received a $2,000 grant to our food service program around school protein and enhancement grant. And that is a grant that covers 50% of the processing fees for the donations that we received, which is basically a side of beef. Is that correct? Oh, both sides of it. There we go. We got the whole cow. So we have an opportunity through that grant that helps us do the processing for that, and also offers up an opportunity for us to continue to receive those grants and hopefully continue to making those relationships so that we can continue to receive sides of beef. One of the other things that I wanted to take advantage of at this time, because we're going to do some visitor comment responses a little bit later on, is I want to take a quick moment and thank all the members of the community that ran for the board. Those folks, regardless of whether or not you'll be joining us as we move forward, or those folks that have served, or those folks that ran and this time around just were successful. I want to thank you. You stepped out and you took a chance. And that shows a lot of grit and determination. It also shows that you care a lot about the direction in which you'd like this district to go. And regardless if you're sitting on the board right now, regardless if you were a member that ran and was not successful, my door is always open. You have good ideas, you have good thoughts, you have good intentions for the direction we want to go. And I want to thank you for taking the risk and stepping out in this community to serve on the board. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and sometimes it is fruitful and sometimes it's not so much. Along with that, I want to take a moment to thank the members that are leaving us. Ms. Thompson and Chair Jellicoe, the amount of time and experience and energy that you've put into helping guide the school district through some very difficult times, including Ms. Summers. I apologize, including Ms. Summers. You can't put a price tag on that. Your time, your effort, your energy, your compassion for trying to get us moving in the right direction and continuing to do that every month, year after year, is something that we will always be grateful for. So at this point in time, I'd really like to extend a hand to those folks and thank them for all their service.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to good of the order. Anyone?
Chair Jellicoe.
Mr. Wright.
I just want to echo Dr. Libby's sentiments. So Chair Jellicoe, Ms. Thompson, Ms. Summers, I want to thank you guys for your time and dedication to the school board and to the staff and students of our district. You guys have set several wheels in motion that we, the board, will need to keep moving forward in order to ensure the success of our district. The biggest one that comes to mind for me is the construction of our new high school. While that funding is currently allocated to our district, the battle's not over yet, and we're going to have to be very diligent in our efforts to make sure that we move forward without any catches and maintain the pace on the construction of the high school. I'm also going to say that we're going to be losing a lot of experience literally overnight. We, the board, moving forward, will have to be very proactive in learning our new roles and ensuring that we conduct business appropriately and hit the ground running. So again, thank you very much to all of you. We really appreciate your support and your assistance in the progress that you've made in your tenure here. And to the new board, I look forward to all of the ideas and progress we will make going forward. I know everybody is very motivated to make positive change, and I'm eager to see it unfold through the proper avenues and according to our roles and responsibilities as trustees. Thanks.
Further good of the order? Seeing none, I do want to inform everyone, I will be attending the joint education meeting in Cheyenne on Thursday. That is probably the last education meeting prior to the session starting in January. There is a joint appropriations meeting in December that, to Mr. Wright's comments, the money for the high school has been allocated, but it is not yet encumbered, and that is a worry. So depending on what the new legislature does and depending on what the various committees do, it's going to be interesting. I do wish my best to the new board. It is my hope each trustee understands their advocacy for and representation of our students, our staff, school district in general, and the community of Rock Springs extends far beyond these four walls at a meeting once a month. There are committee assignments. Each trustee has committee assignments within the district. It's going to start, we're going to have to, I should say the new board is going to need to forge relationships with many of the new legislators because they have that high school in their hands. They hold the purse strings. And so we're going to have to be very diligent. The new board is going to have to be very diligent about making sure that Rock Springs is not forgotten. Thank you. We'll now move to recognition.
Good evening. The Board of Trustees Superintendent Joseph Libby, Sweetwater County School District Number 1 would like to recognize the following employees, students, trustees, and community partners. Trustees and Superintendent, could you please join me down on the floor? We would like to begin with recognizing transportation employee Bo Bussanelli. With the rise of the viruses and the closeness of students on the buses, it was imperative to come up with a long-term solution that would allow the transportation department to sanitize all the buses on a daily basis. This issue was presented by Bo, a mechanic at the transportation department. Bo came up with a concept and designed a lightweight, long-term sanitizing system that would replace the current system that was quickly put together during COVID. Although the previous system worked short-term, it was not a long-term answer. The system that Bo conceptualized was a self-containing system that would allow the transportation department to sanitize the buses indefinitely on a daily basis. Bo then used his blueprint to build a system from scratch that included cutting the aluminum pieces, fitting the pieces, and welding the pieces together. This system fits on the back of the transportation department gator and is quickly removable so that the gator can be used for other projects, such as plowing snow. We would like to recognize Bo's commitment to the students of Sweetwater 1. Thank you, Bo. Mrs. Knezovich, if you'd like to come up for a photo as well. This evening, we continue the tradition of honoring employees that have worked for Sweetwater County School District Number 1 for 5 years. I'm going to call each department or building up, and we will wait to applaud until everybody is up here with their administrators. So the first department is the Central Administration Building. We'd like to recognize Krista Hymas and Lacey Lovato. So if Ms. Gardner and Mrs. Harvey could come up with them as well. Is- Our next building is Desert View Elementary. We'd like to recognize Ashley Dykes, Emily Hinson, and Erica Lang. Lang. Congratulations.
You let us know if we don't, if we need to stand up and then switch together. We can knock up on the top today. Together. All right.
Our next building is Eastside Elementary. We'd like to recognize Tanya Balance, Sammy Bertinoli, and Tina Newman. If Dr. Wells and Ms. Searles could please join. Our next department is the food service. We'd like to recognize Araceli and Tenzio Moreno, Anna Gumry, Maria Sains, and Kirsten Webb. Thank you so much. Thank you. I don't see her. Our next department is Head Start. We'd like to recognize Devin Henderson, Rihanna Kerwin, Megan Sains, and Til Ramingo Seeloff. And Mrs. Ellison and Mrs. Parentoni, if you could join us up here. Our next building is North Park Elementary. We'd like to recognize Elizabeth Upton and Megan Ellen. Elizabeth. Blake Upton. Our next building is Pilot Butte Elementary. We'd like to recognize Kilji Gutierrez. Oh, so if you want to come up and get her certificate. Thanks, Josh. Our next building is Rock Springs High School. We'd like to recognize Sarah Williams, Michael Alton, Logan Christensen, and Courtney Patterson. The Rock Springs High School administration could please come up. Thank you. Our next building is Rock Springs Junior High. We'd like to recognize Ron Urban, Sandra De La O, Anthony Lott, Tammy Parker, Miranda Riggs, Peyton Spalding, and Shauna Black. Wes, if you could please come up. You're the only one that was left. Thank you, Peyton. Thank you so much. Thanks, Anthony. Our next building is Sage Elementary. We'd like to recognize Tori Cole and Michaela Ditton. Our next building is Stagecoach Elementary. We'd like to recognize Lisa Tompkins, Cassie Martinez Corona, and Karina Searle. Our next department is the Transportation Department. We'd like to recognize Julie Barber, Scott Atier, Josh Henderson, Taya Jensen, Michael Lehman, and Connie McQueen. And our last building we'd like to recognize is Walnut Elementary with Melissa Sheldon. That concludes our recognition for tonight.
We'll now proceed with roll call.
Mrs. Summers? Here. Mrs. Schumacher? Here. Mrs. Thompson? Here. Mr. Wright?
Here.
Mrs. Wood? Here. Mr. Sorensen? Chair Jellicoe?
Present. We do have a quorum. Item B, I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda, which includes an addendum. It's been moved by Mrs. Wood. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Schumacher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Okay, our superintendent reports. Project Aware. Mrs. Fletcher?
Chair, Superintendent, members of the board, thank you for allowing me a few minutes to share some of the amazing celebrations we have through our Project Aware. Zach, in the thinking about time, we're going to be going pretty quick, so I'll just give you a little bit of warning. So first of all, Project Aware is part of a bigger state-level consortium that focuses on creating access for our students. So we do this with no general fund. We know that budget is a huge issue, so I want to make sure you understand this is all funded through 2 federal grants and no general fund money is used in any of these pieces. Our major goals are to provide that access, to develop student skills, and to increase the capacity of our community, not just our staff, but our community to support each other. And I would ask Chair Jellicoe, when you are at the JEC, they are talking about continuing funding as part of that meeting. So it's important to look at what are we going to do as far as funding goes once these grants run out. So if you look at the 2 grants that we are part of, they have lots of acronyms. The big deal is we're in the 4th year of 5 in the first grant and the 3rd year of 4 in the second grant. The money provides access to students so they can receive mental health care at no cost, but it also does some other interesting things that we'll talk about here in a bit. So these next 2 slides are very little, but the idea is that I can pull this data for you at any time. So when we look at accessing care, we have had over 300 referrals for Project Aware care as we kind of move through things. And then, we kind of skipped that one, Zach, but that's okay. We'll go, yeah. As we look at this idea of accessing care, we've had over 300 referrals over the last 3 years. And of those, we've been able to connect 184 to care. So those are individual students, non-duplicated numbers. The biggest barrier still remains stigma in that we struggle to get parent consent. So we may see a recognition that a student needs support, We reach out to the parent. They're like, yes, of course, we want this support. As we get further into the process, they're less and less reluctant to be part of therapeutic counseling support. The next slide looks at just where we are this year, so you can see the growth. This was as of the end of October. We had 71 students who had been referred, and we had 15 new students receiving care. Those numbers are up. I double checked them right before we came. We now have 20 new students in care. We average about 85 students a week that we're able to provide direct therapeutic care for. At no cost to the parents, the grant picks up all of those. And so you may ask, well, why does this matter? You're going to be hearing a lot about school improvement and test scores and supporting our students in the next presentation. When we look at the buildings that have a lot of buy-in and a lot of support, the counselors say when these students are receiving the care they need, they can be successful in and out of the classroom. That additional support that Project Aware allows me to move beyond crisis management into skill building with all students. And the parents say, my student can handle a daily challenge that they couldn't handle before. And my students are seeing success for the first time in a long time. If we're not taking care of the mental wellness of our students and our staff, they can't be academically successful. We collect data pre and post on all students who receive care. This is a tiny little snapshot. All of these show significant increases when we ask questions like, I get along with friends. I do well in school. I'm able to cope when things go wrong. Before starting care, all of those numbers are in the barely half. After care, we're approaching 80%. We're seeing gains in those skill sets that kids need in order to be successful. So you may ask, well, how do we decide what we're going to do? We look at a lot of data in order to decide what direction we want to take the use of these grant funds. Those include things like existing climate surveys that all the buildings do. It can include behavioral health survey inventories, including the PNA, which is a statewide assessment, as well as the Project Aware assessment that was given just a little while ago. We use counselor data, we use teacher observations, we use school level behavior data. We hope to use universal screenings, and then we use data that's generated through the grant. And by doing this, we're able to impact the most students possible. So those numbers I started with were the tippy top of the MTSS pyramid. Those of you guys that are kind of aware of what that looks like. The very top are the kids who need the most intervention. That's that direct care number that we talked about. But we also look at how do we support small groups of students and how do we support all students. And one of the ways we do that is through funding and supporting professional development, including having youth mental health first aid trainers. We can provide that training at any time. We're working on QPR, train the trainers, so that we can have the internal capacity to continue that training for our staff as well as our community. We also look at targeted things that our counselors and our social work, I call them our mental health team, might need to fill the gaps in the knowledge that they have. We also look at an interesting program called Sources of Strength. And Sources of Strength is teaching students how to support each other using their strengths. So all of our secondary schools in town are using the Sources of Strength model to create peer-generated support and skill building. The part that's really cool about it is that it doesn't focus on gloom and doom at all. It uses positive social norming in order to have kids realize that when a bump is in the road, we all have inherent strengths that we can draw upon. And we can lend our strengths to others that are in kind of a sticky situation. So we think about it as being expert noticers and connectors to hope. So how do we do that in our community? Additionally, we support students in all the schools. That was kind of secondary, but some of the things we've done in the elementary schools, we've provided resources for counselors, particularly for that tier 2 or those kids that need a little bit of something extra. If you're in an elementary school, look for some spots. The emotional spots are awfully cool. We've also created calming corners in many elementary schools so we can teach students to self-regulate, being able to take a supervised break very quickly and provide some of that sensory stimulation so that they can return to learning and we can focus on the learning. We also know that building connections is a huge supportive factor. So we, through the grant, were able to purchase a whole bunch, the very first sets of Pocket Talks that allowed parents and students to communicate in a wide variety of languages when we didn't have translators available. We've also been able to support book studies in several of our schools. The preschool over at Overland is using the book The Anxious Nation, which is talking, or Anxious Generation, which is talking about the impact of social media and technology use on our youngest brains. So how do we create real connection? We also have teachers who asked their wonderful principal over at Sage if they could continue to do some book studies as well. And they're working on how, what are some of those emotional support strategies that they can use using the Give 'em 5 strategies. And then we also have our high school team, after coming back from the ASCA conference, which is the Association of School Counselors, they're doing a book study on the ASCA model. And the ASCA model really looks at what do we ask counselors to do in school buildings? What is best practice? And how do we do things differently and leverage our amazing mental health team to support all of our students? And again, we also look at those specific types of professional development, which are some of those. We sent them to the ASCA conference, and we went to an amazing conference called Critical Issues, where we talked about and learned a lot about supporting our most at-risk students. So this is the super duper quick 5-minute version. I could talk for hours and hours. If you have questions, I am here, but I'm also willing to send out, invite you in. Are there any questions now?
Any questions? Mr. Wright?
Chair Jelko. Annie, I just want to thank you for your time and
No
for
worries.
presenting this information. I think it's a subject that we definitely need more education on. And just back to the point, one of the things influencing or the questions on our community's mind is increased graduation scores, increased test scores. This all plays a part of it. These are the students taking those tests. These are the students working towards graduation. And there's a huge need for additional tools and additional support. And as you brought up, some of those grants are coming toward the end of their term, and we really need to advocate for the continued funding. And this is one of those things, if you want to see our graduation scores increase, or our test scores increase, that we have to continue supporting. Furthermore, in the forums that we did, suicide prevention was one of the biggest topics and something on the mind of, the state of Wyoming and our district. It's a huge concern for us here. And absolutely, we want to make an impact and lessen those incidents and really build a strong culture. This is something that's immensely beneficial, and really appreciate all the work and time you put into this. So thank you.
Oh, no worries at all. Like I said, I'll talk for hours if you let me. Are there any other questions?
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Reach out if you think of anything later. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the student performance and school improvement plans. I will note that Rock Springs High School School Improvement Plan was inadvertently left off the list, and it is now there as an addendum item.
I'm taking this one with me, Arnie. Good evening, everyone. So we're doing something a little bit different this year. We're going to do a short PowerPoint presentation from all of the school improvement plans across the district. You have the documents that are listed there that go to the state that we have to identify. But what I've asked each of the buildings to do, their feeder schools, the K-6s, the 2 K-6s, the junior high, the high school, Black Butte and Farson, to come up and share a little bit of information across their school improvement plans, the highlights, the progress, and their success goals. What we're going to do is we're going to start here, and I'm probably going to step back because there's going to be some data points there. You may want to turn in a direction as the slides get a little bit smaller as we go through this. So the first thing we want to talk about is that these are the school improvement plans, and always start with the vision mission statement. So empowering all learners to become resilient, innovative, and compassionate individuals equipped with the knowledge, skills, and character to thrive in a global community. That's what we're working towards. That link's live. It's on the board docs. So that takes you to our strategic plan if you want to see how this connects to the strategic plan. Go ahead, if we move forward. So this is where you need to be really careful if you ask a tech person for a pointer that is also a Star Wars fan. So, right? So mental note for our tech folks. One of the pieces of information that came out earlier in November, or October rather, was our school performance ratings. And the easiest piece, because this is tiny for everyone, is that our blue spaces are exceeding, our green spaces are meet, our yellows are partially, and our oranges are not. And you can see Black Butte here at the top exceeds in the alternative. The last 2 years for Farson, we've exceeded in both those expectations. We met the last 2 years at Desert. We've got some partials that come in and out at Desert and Desert Middle School, which is Wamsetter. We have Rock Springs Junior High, that partial and meet, and then partial. And then what Mr. Wright was talking about is our K3s match with their 4.6s. So if the K3s that feed into your 4.6 were not meeting expectation, all the schools fall into that same category. Regardless of any growth that's occurring, they all get the same score. The reason being is that they do growth scores, and your building has to have 2 grade levels that actually tested. And with 3rd grade being the first year that's tested, there's no 4th grade attached to it. So when it goes to the 4, 5, 6 building, there's 3 grades. And because there's 3 grades together, there's a growth score. They attach our K3s to the 4, 5, 6 buildings. So that's why they connect together. Zach, if you can move forward. We've provided the YTOP results for proficiency and advanced, and we've done all of these slides are in 3-year protocols. So 21, 22 across to 23, 24, the Wyoming standard and where we are at across the years. So you get 3rd grade, 3rd grade, 3rd grade. Now this goes back to what Mr. Wright says. 3rd grade 3 years in a row is apples to oranges. They're not the same 3rd graders. So as we move through these, I'm going to show you, we added a slide that shows a diagonal, a growth across the district. But we've got 3rd through 10th grade. You can see where our scores are. We have above average here in proficiency on the state average for 8th grade in advanced placement for English language arts. So Zach, if you could move to the next slide. This is the math slide, 21, 22, all the way to 23, 24. We have some proficiency rates that go across, but you'll also notice nothing's highlighted. So we did not get above state score in our math proficiencies. Zach, if you could move forward. Thank you, sir. This is science. So science is only tested 3 times. 4th grade, 8th grade, and 10th grade. So you got some pretty big jumps that go across these. You notice as we move across, again, 2021 to 2023, 24, we met it once in 8th grade. Here this past year at 46%, we were above the 45 at the Wyoming level, but we are struggling in both of our other areas. So science has some work to do as we move forward through these topics. Zach, if you could move us forward. So here's a slide I want you to pay attention to. This is what Mr. Wright was talking about. This is what doesn't get reported and show up. This is growth. So if you follow the diagonals across the grades, those are the kids that are the cohorts from 21, 22, 3rd grade, 22, 23, 4th grade, 23, 24, 5th grade. So the diagonals as you move across shows us whether or not there is growth in those cohorts as they move forward. And you can run these across for advanced in language arts and advanced in math. So you can see 36 in 4th grade, 45 in their 5th grade, 47 in their 6th grade. They're moving up. We're heading in the right direction. 47, 48, 50, 57, 59, 57, a little bit of a drop there in the 7-8, 56, 55, 43. So as we get our last grade into the high school, we notice that we have some significant drop-offs. And we know that that's where we have work to do. It is the same pattern as you jump into math. We have 42, 30, 29, not working. 39, 34, 36, there's a little bit of an increase. Then you get fifth grade, 35, sixth grade, 40, seventh grade, 44. We're heading the right direction. Then you get sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade the following year. Then you get seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade with a drop, and then eighth grade, ninth grade, 10th grade with a drop. We have some work to do when we hit that secondary level. When we get out of the 7-8, we have a little bit of a struggle as we move forward. But knowing this gives us a place in our school improvement plans to say, what are we doing to meet our growth? Zach, if you could bump us. Thank you, sir. So the work that we're doing at the district level, we started with Beyond Textbooks. We know that in the past, that the curriculum that we were doing and the books that we were teaching to, we did very well. And we taught straight to the book. Problem was that the book didn't match with standards and it didn't match with the state. So what happened is that we had a gradual decrease in our assessments over the last 10 years based on the work that we were doing. So we have to do something different. So we changed our material. We're part of the RIDE grant, which is a statewide program, remanage and innovate the delivery of educational initiatives. So this is more project-based. This is more inclusive of our students. You just heard about Project Aware. We do our Acadians testing across the elementaries and through with our English language arts and our math screeners. So we continue to use that screening data to set up our response to intervention programs. We have the Overland Early Literacy Intervention, and we're going into our second year with our Overland Trail Preschool program. When Overland did their testing last year, we sent 100, is Carrie still here? We sent 130 kids proficient from preschool into kindergarten this past year. Right in there. Prior to that, we didn't have that opportunity. So every year that we have that opportunity to have kids go through the preschool is another year that we have kids starting kindergarten ready to go, which means the kindergarten teachers start ahead of the game, which means the first grade teachers start ahead of the game the next year. So that's a huge bonus for us. We have a K-3 reading professional development that we're working on. We have our response to intervention processes, and then our exact path and study island, which are the resources that we also use. So there's a significant amount of work that we're doing to help support our students across the district level back down to the building level. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it over to our representative for East Side, who is going to rep Dr. Wells. So I'll leave you that mic there. I'll also leave you the pointer if you need it.
Chair, Superintendent, and members of the board. It's a pleasure for me to come up and share with you some of the things that we have been discussing and working together with our Eastside feeder schools. So in our highlights, Eastside and Walnut and Desert View, all in the year 22-23, the EL students met the expectations. And as a celebration as well, in the year 23-24, they also met those celebrations. At Eastside, we had in the year 23-24 some sixth grade, the sixth grade group in ELA were able to meet their expectations. And then one of the subgroups at Desert View is making some good progress, and the white subgroup in the 23-24 year also achieved their goal on their student improvement plan. So that was pretty exciting. Okay, and then under priority practices, we have some important things that we've been working with. We've been working, as far as Eastside, working on the student-teacher relationships. We're going to continue working on that and supporting the students. We also have the PBIS system for our positive behavior interventions that we're continuing to work on. And this year we are really strategically using the MTSS system to help and support students and be able to take care of them both on the academic side and on the behavior side. Under Walnut, We have, they have things that they're working on with the data-informed planning. This is not only in their PLCs, but also on their data teams. So they're really stressing that. They are also working on instructional strategies and engagement and attendance. And by working on those kinds of things, they're able to keep the kids learning and support them in their learning. Desert View is also working on instruction. They're focusing on the high quality instruction. They're also working on the standards being aligned with what they are teaching the students and being careful to make sure they're planning that and organized in their teaching for that. Their professional development is also based on the instructional strategies and instructional practices, and they're really focusing on reading at their school as well. Okay, so then under our goals for success. So some of the goals that we have are things that we've been working on for a while, and some of them we're really trying to just support the strategies through a better system. And so all of us are trying to increase student proficiency, and we're doing this through our first goal through the MTSS process, and really trying to follow the kids and support them where they're at and guide them there. And we're also using student and teacher relationships and recognize that as the kids trust us and as they feel safe at school and in their learning, that they will do better. Walnut is doing the same thing on increasing the proficiency through data teams process and getting better at that. And they are also using high effects, the high effect strategies and engagement strategies and things like that to build their students' proficiency. Desert View is really focusing on reading, and that subgroup, the white subgroup, stressing their work and that on them, but their professional development is also being supported through the reading consultants that we have in the district. So that's pretty cool to see that and how they're using those resources there. They're also, their second goal is through increasing this proficiency through the professional development in differentiation and the engagement that they have with the students. We're really excited to be working with Walnut and Desert View. We've been able to get together 2 or 3 times in talking. We're really collaborating on the support we're giving the teachers, but also the support in that we're giving our students, making sure that we're making good decisions that are going to make a change and a support for the students in their learning. So thank you for letting us share.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair, Superintendent, and Board. Here to speak on behalf of Pilot Butte and the feeder schools, Stagecoach, Sage, and North Park. So again, all of the school improvement plans are within the documents and the slides are here, so I'm just going to hit a few of the highlights. We have pockets of growth as seen in the slide that Dr. Libby shared as well. And again, we have plenty of work to do as well. In no way is this slide bragging rights of all the great accomplishments, but some of the accomplishments and the work that we're doing to get there. Next. Okay, our priority practices. Based on scores, the main thing we all need to focus on is instruction. So all of our priority practices have a learning support involved in there. And then as several messages came about, to support instruction, it takes more than just good teaching. We need those supports for SEL, social emotional learning, and our vision, and also PLC and going through our data. Next slide. So these are the goals that we have in place. Again, each one of our schools have something very similar with increasing our scores in YTOP, right? That's the metric in which we're under the lens for, and so each of our goals are aligned in that way. Pilot Butte, in this slide, we didn't have the score increase, but in our school improvement plan, you'll see that. And the other goals, let's see, are about those approaches in which we're going to get there. So hope that wasn't too short, but good enough to skim it over. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm here to talk about the junior high. Just a few highlights. There were a few things that we did meet as far as targets go, and those were the growth and equity for our building. And then as far as eighth grade goes, I want to just highlight kind of what they have done. They were at state average or very close to the state average within a couple percentage points in math, LA, and science as far as eighth grade goes. And then I wanted to talk about the Upbeat survey and really just talk about the culture of the building. 93% of our staff members feel that they have meaningful work and work together as a team. And so there is strong collaboration and PLC time. And then as far as 84% of teachers at the junior high feel that they help each other and improve their instruction. And then as far as feeling successful as a teacher and supporting students, we had 91% feel that was happening in the building. So, all right. And then as far as priority practices and related actions, really our two big focuses is one is learning support, which is really just what we're doing in the classroom. And so we're really focusing on how we're doing with assessments, which ties into the instruction itself. And so as you see there's going to be a lot of focus on just what we do in the PLC and what comes of it as far as results from the students. And if we don't get the results, we revisit that in PLC. And then as far as data-informed planning, that kind of ties into the PLC, but it also is tying into not just what we're doing in the classroom, but also with what we're doing in intervention, which ties into that learning support as well. And so our two goals really do kind of mesh with one another to where we focus in the classroom as well as what we call JAG time, which is our intervention time. And then just some goals. Again, this is it. This is us. So by the end of the year, we want to be 4% increase in those 3 tested subjects, which puts us pretty close to state average or above. And then 75% of students going into intervention will make a 20% increase. So that's where we're at. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Chair Jellicoe, trustees, Superintendent Libby, I'm proud to present Rock Springs High School's highlights and goals. So for our highlights here at the high school, we've had our post-secondary readiness indicator went from 49% to 54%. Our graduation rate shows a 75 to an 80%. Our credits earned, which is our freshmen on track to graduate, went from a 78 to an 86%. Our highlight there on White Top Math, our 9th grade math score rose from a 31 to a 39%. Currently, some of the data that we're showing in our school right now is that we have students that are failing less than one class has dramatically decreased. We have students ineligible for extracurricular activities has also dramatically decreased this year, as well as student absenteeism. The priority practices that we're working on this year include our new accelerated block schedule. Some of the thoughts behind that were the reducing cognitive load, relationship building between teacher and student, and our power hour connection within Beyond Textbooks and how that works together. Our Beyond Textbooks curriculum that we're using right now is for our curricular alignment. It is research-based improvement procedure that has worked in other areas, and so we're currently using that. Our instruction includes our academic classes, and then with that tied with our power hour every day, we add enrichment or reteach. We have an instructional leadership practice and focus this year that goes in with our PLCs. So our PLCs this year are grade level PLCs, which are data driven and give us an opportunity to do mini PD lessons for our staff. We are also part of the RIDE statewide initiative, which will help us with our transition pathways and hopefully open those up and that communication up between all secondary, so the junior high as it flows into the high school. Our big academic goal that we're working on this year is by the end of the 24-25 school year, we're going to strengthen data-driven instruction, collaboration, and targeted interventions through the consistent implementation of grade level PLCs, data review, power hour interventions, and a structured MTSS process. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, the board, Dr. Libby. I'm Brian Blake. I'm the school principal for Black Butte High School. So the couple of highlights we have is we are again another school performance level exceeding alternative school expectations. This is our third year in a row with that. We've initiated some PLC training and support with Compass, which is through Black Hills Special Service Consortium. We also have some staff PDs where we're focusing on differentiation in the classroom and also classroom management and structures. Our priority practice at Black Butte is we are actually trying to build more positive relations within our school. We always tend to see some issues with especially peer-to-peer. So we're retooling our PBIS system with our new school store, trying to embed more type authentic relationship building with students. We're also focusing, because this year we've kind of broken away from the high school with PLCs, and we're doing it by ourselves. So we're also working through Compass to actually train my staff on how to run when we have, we don't have 3 or 4 English teachers. We have 1 English teacher, 1 science teacher. So how do we find something common that we can all work on? So that's a priority practice. And our goals really tied to that is we're going to be using our climate survey and try to implement a lot of the things at Black Butte with our PBIS, and then see in the spring to see have we seen any growth from our fall climate survey to the spring, but we also can compare from spring to spring on that. And then the other one is basically we want our staff, the Black Butte High School staff, to run PLCs on their own without the support of somebody, but we're there and we're making some great progress on that. Any questions? Oh, I got really loud. Sorry, Zach. I didn't mean to lean into the mic. That's just, I like to do that.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Jellicoe, Dr. Libby, trustees, I'm Barbara Rosanica, the principal at the First and Eden Schools. Some of the highlights from our building is that First and Eden met the target in achievement in the elementary, middle, and the high school levels. The middle school and high school are exceeding state expectations. Our high school post-secondary readiness indicator increased from below targets to exceeding targets. That talks about whether our students are college, career, or military ready. Our First and Eden students exceeded the state achievement in 16 of the 19 assessments that we administered. Our first priority practice is to increase engagement in our community. We're looking to increase family engagement, community engagement, and student engagement. According to the Greater School Partnership, research shows that students learn better when their families and the local community organizations are engaged in schools. Strong family engagement is linked to increased student achievement, reduced absenteeism, and higher graduation rates. In addition, community engagement can help ensure that students' social, emotional, and physical health needs are addressed while also providing meaningful real-world opportunities. First and Eden schools are striving to engage parents by increasing opportunities to be part of our school community through informational meetings to build relationships and increase our families' knowledge of our school and the systems in place to support their children. We did parent meetings for our 9th graders on the Hathaway. We've done parent meetings with our seniors on graduation, what that looks like. We've started some enrichment activities for our elementary students, inviting parents into, we've done things like, we had a paleontologist come in, and we did a Native American history, which was fun. We're also building relationships with students by building real-world connections to the learning they do at school, increasing inquiry-based learning structures and personal student-centered learning opportunities and celebrating their successes. We have worked really hard this year to make sure that our seniors get the opportunity to do some job shadowing activities in the community. We've also done, we invited University of Wyoming, thank you, Desert View, and they came out and did a STEM initiative the other day that was fabulous and amazing. Community support and engagement will increase by increasing public sharing of the great things happening in our building through news outlets and social media. So our goals for both of these, our second initiative is to increase our growth. Although we continue to meet achievement targets at the middle school, elementary, and high school levels, we recognize that an area of potential improvement is growth. First and Eden Elementary School has remained below target in the area of growth for the past 2 years, and we're now noted to be below the target in equity, which is also a measurement of growth. While continuing to meet the growth targets in our high school and exceeding the growth targets in our middle school, these percentages are lower than what we've seen in the past. So individual analysis of student performance indicates unacceptable growth of some of our lowest and highest performing students. So not only sometimes don't our low kids grow, but also our highs. So using the Beyond Textbooks protocols, content teachers will utilize common assessments to measure individual students' mastery of each standard as it's taught. Following administration, teachers do reteach with students who do not score mastery and then retest. We use multiple measures of student performance for students grade 3 through 10 in reading, math, and science, and students not exhibiting growth are staffed during our PLC meetings. So our goal for both of those initiatives is that by the winter, their student growth in the Y-top interim will evidence growth for all students, and that by the end of the year, we will meet our growth targets at the elementary, middle, and high school levels.
Any questions? Thank you.
So thank you for presenting. Is that one on? How about now? How about now? There we go. Thank you for presenting this evening. One of the things I'd like to share with the board is we've done a lot of work since I've gotten here on our alignment between the vision and mission and then the school improvement plans, so that there is one direction that we are heading, and that's towards the vision and mission statements around student success. All of the goals that were here also align with the statements that occurred at the beginning of the school year over at the high school when they stood up on stage and said, we're going to increase our graduation rates. We're going to increase our scores in all areas 20 points above state average. Everything aligns with the work in the direction that we said we would have over our 5-year goal as we move forward. One caveat I want to make mention is that we did not have our desert school present tonight, Wamsutter. The reason why we did not have Wamsutter present tonight was my decision, is that the population of the group in Wamsutter is so small that if we provided any information that was directly connected to a grade level, you could tell who the kids are. So it's a data privacy issue. It's not that we're not holding the Wamsutter community to the highest of standards as we are the rest of the school district. The reason we chose to do it, and the reason I chose to do that, is to protect our students and to protect their ability to grow in a positive fashion. So that's the reason why we did not include Wamsutter up here as part of our professional goals. I just want to thank folks for coming up. This is something new. What gets measured gets done, and we will continue to measure and provide feedback on these goals as we move forward through the school year and throughout the time that I am here. So thank you.
I would just like to thank everyone that presented as well. To piggyback on what Dr. Libby just said, one of the reasons, and this is not an excuse, it's a fact, the large districts in the state struggle to meet proficiencies in many areas because of so many subgroups. And the subgroups, we have subgroups for everything you can imagine. But if you get into a smaller district, and they can't have those subgroups because of the very point that Dr. Libby made, it identifies students. And so it's confidentiality issues and so forth. So I just want to point that out. Like I said, it's not an excuse. It's just a fact that large districts have to deal with a lot of different populations and a lot of different subgroups that have to meet these various goals as well. Mr. Wright, did you have something?
Yeah, Chair Jelko, if I might add to that WDE website that I shared earlier, you can break things down by subgroups and kind of see where our different schools need to spend some additional focus. And so I thought that's something that's interesting. Furthermore, I want to thank all the people that put a lot of time and energy into those school improvement plans, because I know they aren't taken lightly. But I'll say that as a community member and as a dad, there's things that we can be doing as parents and as a community to also help these scores. We have great teachers. We have great admin. Are there room for improvement? Absolutely. There always will be. But we can support them. Pilot Butte has the Watchdog program. It's for, male father, grandfather figures to be in the school as role models. We look back at the Upbeat survey results, and not a single person that I remember said, I want to see higher ACT scores. I want to see higher graduation rates. When we said, what do you want at the end of the day? They said, I want my student to be safe. I want them to be happy. I want them to receive a quality education and be able to go out and make their way in the world. So it's interesting to take that and then always have these conversations around scores. Yes, we need to increase our scores. Yes, we're going to focus on that. But how are we going to do it? Eastside has data books. I know that they do spend a lot of time trying to look at their students' progress on individual tasks and have data-driven reasons that you can have conversations with your students and say, oh, I noticed that you're trending down in this subject, son or daughter, let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do to help you. Oh, you're trending up in this, but they're underutilized and there's not the parental involvement that we need to really make that tool successful. And so they're out there. We as a community really need to step up. Another thing on that subgroup, look at the groups that are working through poverty or homelessness. Like, you want to talk about how we can help them be successful and learn in school? Well, let's feed them. Let's get clothes on their back that help them be able to focus in school. So what can we as a community do? There's diaper drives, right, at Overland. There's coat drives at all the elementaries. There's food pantries at the schools. Those things are necessary too. So while our educators are all responsible for this day in and day out, I can promise you they're working their tails off, and we as a community can help in other ways as well. All of that's going to increase our test scores and increase our graduation rate. So please help out.
Any other comments? Thank you again to all those that presented. Okay, we'll move on to the facilities plan. Mr. Salaroli.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Superintendent, Dr. Wooten. By now, hopefully, you guys had a chance to kind of go over them. There's a lot of projects on there, and 20-year out is a long reach, but that is what the school facilities, their last facility assessment went out 20 years. This plan is a plan that everything that is in black and blue is what the state needs by next week. Everything else that's in like a purplish color, the school plans themselves from the building administrators, I'm still working on those. The state doesn't really worry about those as much as they do the long range plan that involves big dollars. Your major maintenance money, anything over $50,000 on up. So there is one thing, if you notice where I have the blue, the reason why the black and blue are important is the blue, there's a state statute. Then I've listed a state statute. And what that does is it gives the state the authority to reimburse the district for wages, benefits, everything for people that are hired and identified at the time of the facility plan. So that's coming up here, like I said, in a week or so. So I have gone through and identified 20 years worth of projects, even though I won't be here 20 years from now. Someone will be here 20 years from now. And it gives us a chance to put on more people and actually increase our crew size for construction renovations and things like that. Everything in a school runs a cycle. 15 years, 20 years is not a far reach to say, okay, where are we at education-wise? What are the needs of the building for education? Look at, if you go back 20 years ago when I first came to school districts, the need for data, the need for power in classrooms for charging computers and connection of computers wasn't nearly what it is today. So everything changes. And so what I've done is I went and projected out renovations of even our newer schools. Our the oldest new school is Sage. So even that school in another 5 to 7 years will be coming up for a renovation. So I tried to identify those and keep in line with the Bureau Veritas 20-year projection as well as their facility assessments. So that's what this is in a brief. You'll probably, this board will probably get another addendum, and that will include all of the, once I'm done meeting with all the principals, all of their 2-year plan. I try to include the 2-year plan as much as possible on my long-range plan, because if by chance they do have something that is district funded or it's required to go out to bid, remember, once you guys approve this, then I don't have to come back and say, hey, can I go out to bid for this project? That kind of cuts about 30 to 45 days off the timeline. I can just move forward with it, come to you guys with the prices, and we can move on the project. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 4 is the communications and correspondence or public comment. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's right to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district's website. As per policies BDDH and KD, please limit your comments to the board to one time. If your comments have been previously submitted in writing, please refrain from addressing the board a second time. Written comments will be posted to the agenda in the written public comment section below. Written public comments must be received by 1:00 p.m. on the day of the board meeting and will be available for the public and trustees to view, but will not be read aloud at the board meeting. Policies BDDH and KD continue to state, questions asked by the public shall, when possible, be answered immediately by the chairman or referred to staff members present for reply. Questions requiring investigation shall be referred to the board or administrative staff for consideration and later response. It does not look like we have any written public comment, so I would open it up to anyone that wishes to address the board.
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent Limby, and members of the board. My name is Sherelle O'Driscoll, and I am a parent. I know that the district is working with WSBA with policies all over the state. While I think guidance is important, I would also like to state that we need to make sure we are keeping our district interests at hand to make sure we properly evaluate all the advice/recommendations coming from the WSBA. If we only listen to them, that completely defeats the purpose of local control and voting in new members that help echo what the populace is saying or give a difference of opinion. For the policy, I know we had the online announcement through Public Square, but we, the public, were only given 9 days to give feedback. How was the general public made aware of this if they do not have Parent Square and any stakeholders that be allowed to give feedback? Why do we need to rush through policies and passing them so quickly? This is what leads to lawsuits and gray areas. Fun fact, did you know since January of 2020 to today, we have paid Lemich Law $1,475,439.54 according to checks written. I believe this is a good argument for in-house counsel and why we should have a lawyer at our board meetings to help with legal matter and questions that the general public need help with. There are some issues that I had found after the closing date, and I have given them to Mr. Wright and Mr. Sorensen about the policies. Policy BF, it says that it was recently reviewed and there was no changes. But on this Wyoming Education Policies Reference Manual, what are you referring to? I reached out to the WDE and they do not know what this is. Then it also says the Wyoming State Statute 21-1-21-26A. This also does not exist in Title 21. So what are you referencing? I want to know how you can pass a policy when the information is not correct. The policy KD, the link for the Attorney General's opinion, is broken. And this is an attorney's opinion of over 50 years ago from 1973. Policy PFB, can we please be more specific on the feedback time and such as an allotted number of days and how this information will be given to stakeholders? I saw the thing here, again, I'm going to ask about Don't Ever Stop. There was nothing said in there of your implementation plan of what we're doing with the junior high and the high school and helping doing stuff. We've now paid them $471,145 since 2022. Are we being duped or being taken advantage of? Where is this money and what are they doing? I'd like to know where their contract, if we're renewing it. I've asked many questions. As stated earlier in board meetings, our funding is going to be lowered with reduced numbers of students. So this may be a good time to trim the fat and cut some unnecessary spending, which will hopefully help us in the long run. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Further public comment? Further public comment?
Chair Jellicoe, Dr. Libby, and trustees, my name is Kari Cochran, and I'm here to ask again for the district to look over first quarter failure rates over the last 6 to 7 years at the high school. In that time frame, at the high school alone, we have continually changed the schedule, and we have gone from having a 7-period day with multiple lunches, a 7-period day with 1 lunch, to a block schedule with all classes on Fridays, to a 4-day block schedule with 8 classes, to now having an alternative block schedule with 4 classes. When reading over the most recent PIT minutes, I noticed that the number of Fs make it look like we've had an improvement, but actually the kids have had half of the classes that they did the previous year, and at the end of the quarter, completed a semester's worth of work versus the previous quarter's worth of work. So numbers are actually worse. I also know and read in the PIT minutes that the transition from the 8th grade to the 9th grade is a struggling point. It is a struggling point for me as a parent getting ready to send another student up to the high school. The junior high schedule has remained pretty much the same to my knowledge over the last 6 years. That is a benefit to the staff and students. It helps to provide consistency. They also have math and language every day. That is when they have that transition to the high school, it was every other day, and now it is 1 semester of math. I know they're doing stuff in Tiger Time, but I've heard from teachers and from kids, they dumbed it down to have the easiest part of that math of the 10 minutes that they could in order to just skate by. I don't think this is going to gauge and help us with any of the pieces that the kids need to be successful in school. The district has 2 open math positions, 2 English language positions at the high school open since March and July. We've heard it many times that there's nothing comparable to an actual teacher in the classroom. And some of our kids are really struggling with having long-term subs and a semester's worth of work or a year of math within a semester. Some of these students have had back-to-back long-term substitute teachers. I would like to see the data provided for student failure rates based on first quarter. I would like the board to look at them as well as the district. I've heard a lot about the cell phone policy. I listened to the requests and thoughts from the governor, state superintendent, as well as trustee Schumacher, at the last board meeting. The last time that this data was publicly presented to the board was in 2020. Do we have new data on the cell phone policy? Can we look at that? When will that data be presented and shared? I spoke to the students about the tardy policy, and it doesn't seem like it's maybe working, so we need to change it. When I was a junior, the tardy policy, it didn't matter. You got 4 tardies, you got out of school suspension. It was an awful consequences, but it was followed through regardless of who you were, and you knew the consequence was gonna stick. Our kids are smart, and if we hold them accountable and are consistent, they will rise to the occasion. I wanna congratulate the district for working so hard to get the entire district trained in QPR. It was a fight that I worked tirelessly to have done. We had over 200 staff get trained earlier, and now we are working on getting everyone completely trained. We have trainers that are being trained with our counselors in order to continue to make this a working progress. I hope this is annual process and that we can work on planning team QPR for our students. I think it would be great to gradually get a few kids from each athletic team, activity, or even separate groups to take the training and start working towards
Thank
having.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Further public comment?
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, Dr. Libby, and members of the board. My name is Addison Fisher, and I am a student in the Rock Springs High School CTE Academy. I am an ambassador representing HOCA, the Academy of Public Service, and the CTE Academy as well. This is our 3rd monthly board report, and which we will report to the school board each month throughout the school year. Here are some of the accomplishments and highlights that the career academies have achieved since the last board meeting. Since the last board meeting on October 14th, APS and HOCA students have completed the following: 480 hours of community service, APS juniors have job shadowed 375 hours. APS seniors have job shadowed 324 hours. HOCA juniors have job shadowed 238 hours. HOCA seniors have job shadowed 265 hours. All APS and HOCA juniors will be certified in BLS/CPR after tomorrow. APS juniors helped to ask the questions at the school board candidate forum on October 21st. HOCA and APS continue to work weekly with their mentees at Pilot Butte and Eastside Elementary. APS sophomores and juniors have attended field trips at the 3rd Judicial District in Green River. HOCA seniors have packed and delivered approximately 1,620 weekend food bags to various elementary schools for weekend food. CTE juniors are mentoring students at multiple schools across the district, such as Walnut, Sage, Stagecoach, North Park, Eastside, and RSJH CTE classes. CTE Academy is partnering with the community to bring mentors to our CTE Academy students at Rock Springs High School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Further public comment?
Hello, my name is Natalie Powell, and I'm the co-chair of the Rock Springs High School Parent Involvement Team. I am here to give our monthly PIT update. During our November parent meeting, we were able to preview and begin discussions on data as it relates to student achievement. Some of the data discussed were graduation rates, including a breakdown by subcategory, tardies, attendance, and the number of students failing by grade level. PIT appreciates and is encouraged by the data being tracked, displayed, and utilized. We also saw updated school performance data collected by the WDE and discussed how Rock Springs High School is scoring. We remain concerned that the high school scores below target in every category except one, and we know that we will continue to be accredited with support through the WDE. PIT is asking what is being done to address school performance indicators, and we look forward to reading the school improvement plan. We know administrators will be meeting with the WDE regarding the school performance and look forward to hearing specifics of what supports are in place and what happens if we don't meet state benchmarks. One area of concern we highlighted and was mentioned earlier tonight was the drop in scores from 8th grade to 9th grade. There seems to be a disconnect as well as a negative impact in scores in that transition year. We wonder what proactive steps are being taken to help address this. Also discussed is the concern that some student engagement is dwindling, and there is a subset of students not benefiting from clubs, activities, or sports. Pitt would like to know if intramurals are something that we could explore bringing back to the high school. We also believe an interest survey sent to students could help gauge interest in current offerings and help brainstorm possible expansions. We look forward to hearing what training and systems will be in place this school year regarding ACT testing. We know how important the testing environment is for the ACT, as it is a critical marker for school success and contributes to the high school's report card and accreditation. As always, we welcome thoughts and ideas by joining the PIT meeting on December 2nd at 6 p.m. at the Satellite Campus, or by emailing us at rshspit307@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Further public comment?
Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, Dr. Libby, and board. On October 30th at the
Excuse me, would you give us your name, please?
My name is Brittany Mong.
Thank you.
Sorry. On October 30th at the Rock Springs Junior High, a child brought a weapon onto campus. We were then provided false information from staff stating this child never made it into the school, when in fact they did have a knife. This child then had the weapon taken away, was sent back to class, and was suspended for 1 day. However, no teacher in direct care of this child was ever aware of this situation, which then resulted in further issues with other children occurring. I'm here tonight to address how the issue was handled and request policy changes to policy JFCJ, penalties E and F. This offense was considered a type 4. However, in our policies, section 3 penalties, letters E and F state on the last line that they shall be disciplined at the discretion of the building principal. I would like to request to have this changed to set the term just as all the other penalties are set. I would request this be changed to not less than 3 days and may receive additional disciplinary action up to and including expulsion from school for the remainder of the year. I in no way wish to make make an example out of a child. However, I truly believe this policy needs revised to show that what our district will and will not tolerate within our schools. We need to create clear boundaries of what is acceptable and unacceptable within our district. This is the only way that we are going to ever create a safe learning environment for our students and teachers, is to show that we will hold students accountable for bringing weapons onto school grounds. I would also like to request it be added that should a student bring a weapon onto school grounds, that the teachers that are in direct care of these children daily will be made aware of the incident so that they can make better informed decisions to protect our children while in their class, as well as themselves. They also will help prevent any students involved from being put with the other child to deter from further issues. I've also submitted a 6-page grievance that I will provide you all with to address the misinformation given to us as parents, in the hopes that this will be addressed correctly and that the staff will be held accountable in an appropriate and acceptable manner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Further public comment? Further public comment?
Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent Libby, Board of Trustees. I'm here to talk about the free and reduced applications. I just want to send, publicly a reminder to everyone that the applications need to be completed every single year. It's not just, something that you do once. Also, they can be completed at any time during the year as well. That's something we understand, that financial circumstances change. We have online applications on the district website, and then paper forms are available at the CAB and at every single school. You can get them from the secretaries. The information is completely confidential, so when a student goes through the lunch line or breakfast line, no one knows. They just go through, they enter in their number, they give a staff member their ID card, and there's nothing documented anywhere. So the students, it's completely anonymous. I'll share out the information on Parent Square as well. Right now, reduced price students, we received a very generous donation that we're still able to pay off reduced price lunches. So 1 breakfast and 1 lunch per day. So we do pay those off. So basically reduced price students right now are getting their meals for free. I'm hoping that will end with the donation that we have throughout the remainder of the school year. When I calculated it out, it was almost to the end of April. But again, if we get more reduced students, it could be, a little bit less than that. But again, students are sick, and I count that for every single day. So if that's every single reduced student right now, 8 breakfast and lunch every single day for the remainder of the year, that would last us till the end of April. So I would really like to encourage people to fill out the applications. We want to help people, and we want kids to eat so they can learn and be successful.
This will be my last plea to guardians and parents that, children that are hungry, no matter what the age, do not learn. So please, we know that financial situations change throughout the year. If at any time you even think there's a possibility that you might qualify or things have turned for your family and you're not able to provide some of the resources so that your child can eat or children can eat, please, please, please apply for these free or reduced lunches. It's there for a reason, and I know that there's a lot of pride involved in that, but when it comes to our children and their opportunity to learn, there's nothing more important. So please consider that. Further public comment? Further public comment? Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to C, which is the response to previous month's public comment questions. Dr. Libby?
Thank you, Chair Jellicoe. I have a few here that I want to talk about. Before we get started, we've collected a lot of questions since I've been here for some responses, and we took some information that was on the original webpage and put it into under construction. I've been working with some community members on how we can better kind of organize some of the responses that we have so that they're easier to search and they kind of direct straight back to the questions that are being asked. So tonight I was going to hit on a few that have come up, and I wanted to make sure that I can get a few of these out, but nobody wants to be here to midnight because we got a bunch of these questions. So as I move forward, I'm going to be working with Ms. McKee is going to kind of help me organize, and I've asked Ms. Summers to kind of look at it as well. So as we move forward, we can get it organized well. So the few of the ones that I wanted to talk about is we had some conversation around reunification and how do reunification occur, and there's some questions that came out, so I wanted to catch this quick. They asked if there was a goal for a timing and reunification, and the only way to answer that is as soon as possible. The quicker when we have a drill or if there's actual emergency to get kids back to their parents, the objective is to do that effectively and as efficiently as we possibly can. So there's no real time frame for it. It's just as quick as you can do it is to get it done. There's a question is whether or not it matched in these drills matched with any strategic goals. So first and foremost, our emergency drills are mandated by the state. If you had it connected back to a strategic goal, it probably goes back to the strategic plan for emotional well-being, is to make sure that kids and staff feel safe and that they know the procedures that are in place for them to continue to be safe. There was a question is there any way to have a different way to release Rock Springs High School students that drive? That's a great question. The issue is that if you relocate from the high school and you go to a different location, if we release you, your vehicle's not there. So you'd have to walk back across town to get back to your vehicle. And the whole purpose of the reunification plan, if there truly is an emergency, is to make sure the child goes back to a parent so that the parent knows that the child is safe instead of just getting a text message or said, hey, I checked myself out and we've gone on our way. It's not that we can't look at trying to find a different way, but the original purpose for doing that is to return the child to their parents so that they know that they're safe. How do you combat issues for reunification drills that have a cause with afternoon work, college classes, or movement between the Satellite High School and Rock Springs High School? This is a great question. I had a chance to talk to Dr. Young at Western College University, and he basically said if we're running a drill and our kids are late, his staff and his professors are made aware. And I would suspect that if we needed to reach out to local businesses to make them aware that we ran a drill or there was actually an emergency, that those businesses and those owners would give our students grace for being a part of that program. We continue to work on the communication between the Satellite School and Rock Springs High School, that if there is a drill and the drill is over, but it ends in a fashion that there's still classes left, that communication goes out for the rest of the afternoon, those kids would occur. However, if it truly was a reunification plan, you're not going back to the high school. Classes are over for that day. But again, we'll continue to work through that communication. That's a repeat. There's a question about with no notice. So what was the reason behind no notice? And in our last drill is the perfect example. In the 3 years prior, there's always been notice for when the reunification drills were going. And in many times, a significant number of the students were picked up from the high school or didn't participate in the high school drill at all. So the message that was relayed to me was, you're going to love it. This drill goes really well at the high school. We've got 2 of the elementary schools that are joining us. It's going to work slick. No notification. Double the kids from the high school showed up at Western College, and we had a log jam. The only way that you find out if a drill is going to work appropriately is to actually run the drill. And when we did, we found out we had some issues. So again, I've met with Dr. Young. I have a meeting coming up with Dr. Sweet, who is their athletic director, but also helps with the facilities. And we have talked about better ways to manage our organization so that if we have elementaries and the high school there at the same time, that we can move our elementary kids out into a different location so that we can snap through the elementary kids a lot quicker than what we can for the high school. We also recognize that we had parents that beat buses. We had buses caught in traffic. And then we backed up the gym with folks that had gone through the queue, that we couldn't get elementary parents through the parents of the high school that were already there. So then we had parents trapped with their kids there, and it was a really unique situation, but the only way to make sure that we knew it was going to work well was to do it without it being notified. If it was truly an emergency, we would have had a problem, and we would probably still reunifying kids right now from that drill, because there were so many folks that showed up. So we've got some work to do on making sure that space in that gym and how we queue the parents through is actually set up appropriate so that we can have some efficiencies there. One of the questions was around how do the alerts go out, and if parents have set their parent square for a notification that it's blocked. And we talked to Ms. Tomlin that there is a way to override that so that it will push a message through regardless of what a preference is, so that we can make sure that that information and that communication goes out well. We continue to have conversations with Rock Springs Police Department on how we communicate and how we can better use our systems. And we also have sent some folks down to a Raptor training to help support with our reunification plan as we move forward. We sent a tech person down for that. So that was one of the pieces. One of the other pieces that we wanted to talk about was there's been continued conversation around the identification of library books that may have content in them that are above grade level, and they originally were identified as blue label books, thank you, and that the blue labels kind of identified whether or not the content of the material was appropriate or not. So I had to do some digging. We found out that the blue labeling doesn't come from the book companies, it doesn't come from Follett, it doesn't come from McGrail. That is just something that occurred within the school district. Currently, we have books that are identified that way, that if it is a book that is written above the grade level for which the book is housed, it has a blue label on it. So if there is a book at the 7-8 building that is actually written with content level or grade level that is in ninth grade or a high school grade level, the book will have a blue tag on it. That same book that is out at the satellite or at the high school will not have the blue label on it because the ninth graders are there, so it's appropriate for the grade level. So in conversations, and I continue to have conversations with our community members about it, is how's the rest of that system identified? How do we allow parents to be aware of these types of books? Is there a form or a fashion in which there's some sort of communication, or there's a way for parents to be involved in whether or not those are books that they want their kids checking out? So I'm still working with 2 community members on it. We've got some decent ideas. I'll be working with the librarians and our curriculum and instruction department to kind of see if we can solidify this process. But there was a beginning of a process, and then it just kind of stopped. And I think there just needs to be more clarification around what is it, how does it operate, how are parents made aware of some of where these books are at. We had a question about third graders and laptops, taking third graders and laptops taken home. And this was from our last meeting. And the question was concern is to why. Originally, I think this went back to the COVID years and for winter storms, that we wanted the kids to have their laptops. We wanted them to take them home so that they had them through the winter weather. And when we had online educational opportunities, that if we had a snow day, it turned into a virtual day and they had them. The concern that the parent has is that when they were on them, that the kids weren't on the site, so they were playing games, or they just didn't want them doing that at home. I continue to talk to Ms. Tomlin Ms. Tolman about those, what the protocol is for that. And I had a chance to talk to some more folks around that if you don't want your child to have that computer or have access to it when it's at home, you don't have to connect it to your Wi-Fi. You can have them turn it off. You can store it in your room. But currently, that's still the process, and the protocol is that our kids take those home through the winter time. The last one is that there's been conversations around consultants, and I think this is the same group, Don't Ever Stop, in our consultants that work here. And the question continues to arise as to, well, what does this group do, these 2 individuals? So the funding for Don't Ever Stop is Oh, Jody, please help me out. Where's the funding? There we go. Maintenance of effort. Thank you. So we have maintenance of effort funding that has to be used for every year. And the consultants that work through Don't Ever Stop are paid through the maintenance of effort work. The work that they do within the district is they do professional development for building administrators on how to better support teachers in their PLCs and tier one instruction. So they work at the junior high, they work at the high school, and they work with the administrators on to better support tier one instruction in the classroom. They also work with teachers in their PLCs on data collection, and they work with the building administrators on helping support them in the accountability of the work that's being done that directly aligns to our school improvement and our programs. So it is 2 consultants. It is their pay for 3 years is the term that they've been in. And this is the final year for it. So it's been a year-to-year contract, and we've had them for 3 years. So 2 staff members, 3 years through maintenance of effort funding. So those are a few of the topics that I wanted to hit. I will continue to pull some of the other pieces that have come from some other visitors' comments, and we are going to try to align them better onto the webpage so that they're easier to search. So, oh, no, I have one more. So there's a question about school resource officers, because we have an officer that was injured in the line of duty over at the high school, hurt his arm, and there was a question as to whether or not we are still receiving resources and supports while Officer Hager was injured. We are. I had a conversation with Commander Salazar. She has officers that have signed up to take those duties. There's also another officer on the police force that is working through the process to also become a school resource officer. So in the conversation with Commander Salazar, we do have officers that continue to be present over at the high school in the morning when the kids are coming in, at lunchtime, and towards the end of the day when kids are leaving at the end of the day. So it's our most semi-supervised time. I also reached out and had a conversation with Pitt that if they wanted to be involved or they wanted to support, they could also volunteer during that time. If they chose to, they would just need to talk to building administration, and they would be more than willing to have some extra support during those timeframes. So I wanted to make sure that I communicated that one as well. Thank you.
Thank you for those follow-ups. Okay, moving on to the treasurer reports. Mrs. Summers?
All right, for the general fund treasurer's report, month of October 2024. The beginning balance was $9,219,932.40, plus revenues received during the month of $12,865,395.53, and interbank transfers of $7,600,000. Less the warrants written during the month of $8,651,691.80. And the voided checks totaling $8,382.76. Ending with a cash balance of $13,442,018.89. For the school lunch program, October 2024, the beginning balance was $287,600.31. Interest accrued during the month was $1,029.78. Revenue received during the month was $93,534.30. The CACFP reimbursement totaled $14,480.42, and the federal reimbursement totaled $133,636.02. There was a reimbursement of the CACFP of $2,263.39, and that ended with a balance of $528,017.44. For the Head Start program, the beginning balance was $48,947.09. Deposits during the month totaled $207.16, and we ended with a cash balance of $49,154.25. That concludes the treasurer's reports.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's reports for the general fund, the school lunch program, and the Head Start program. Moved by Mrs. Schumacher. Is there a second? Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the warrants. Mrs. Summers.
The district warrants, checks number 171191 through 171898 totaled the amount of $5,207,873.02. Net payroll numbers 808176 through 809558 totaled the amount of $3,212,309.81. And payroll numbers 129582 through 129595 totaled the amount of $25,263.04. Checks number 4053016, 4056198, 4062124, 4066100, and 4068437 were transfers to the general fund totaling transfers of the general fund totaling $6 million. Check number 10-2024-01 was school district retiree insurance account. That totaled $100,000. Check number 1001-01 was the insurance fund money market account, totaled $300,000. Check number 9-2024-01 was the Sweetwater County School District number 1 retiree insurance account, totaled $692. And check number 4062129 for major maintenance totaled $1,015,000. Check number 4062131 was a general fund transfer totaling $2,200,000. And that concludes the warrants.
Thank you. First, is there a motion to approve the district warrants and the release of payments?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wright. Discussion. I noticed in previous months, we have had a payment to Mike Stevens, who is the insurance consultant, for $2,000. This past month, there was a warrant for $5,000 and another one for $2,500. Could I get an explanation on those, please?
Superintendent Libby, Chair Jellicoe, Board of Trustees. So the explanation for that is beginning fiscal year July 1st, we granted Mike Stevens an increase in his contract of $500 per month. So his monthly payment increased from $2,000 a month to $2,500 a month, based on a lot of different factors, the services he was providing, and felt like that was a very valid increase for his payment. And then the warrant you're seeing for $500,000 or $5,000. That was a result of two monthly payments.
Okay.
So we were behind, and so we ended up giving him two payments to kind of catch him up to speed.
Thank you for that clarification. And secondly, I'd like to declare a conflict for myself on warrant 00171-849. So we do have a motion to approve. Mrs. Thompson.
Declare a conflict on 00171-439.
Thank you. Okay. We do have any other discussion? Okay, we do have a motion to approve the district warrants and the release of those payments. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion, unless members of the board request specific items be held and discussed separately and/or removed from this section. Okay, B is approval of the minutes from the October 14th, 2024 regular meeting. C, approval of the minutes from the October 14th, 2024 executive session. D is finance, approval of the bid for bulk custodial supplies. E, the Head Start, approval of the Head Start annual report. F, human resources, approval of personnel recommendations, and this also had an addendum item as the hire for the Director of Transportation. Hearing none of the items held, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? It's been moved by Mr. Wright. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. American Education Week. Mariah, if you would come up and join us as the representative of the Sweetwater Education Association. This November is November 11th starts American Education Week. We have a proclamation here. Okay. Whereas public schools are the backbone of our democracy, providing young people with the tools they need to maintain our nation's precious values of freedom, civility, and equality. And whereas by equipping young Americans with both practical skills and broader intellectual abilities, schools give them hope for and access to a productive future. And whereas education employees, be they substitute educators, custodians, paraprofessionals, nutrition service providers, secretaries, maintenance, teachers, bus drivers, or other special providers, work tirelessly to serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. And whereas schools are community linchpins, bringing together adults and children, educators and volunteers, business leaders and elected officials in a common enterprise. Now, therefore, we do proclaim the week of November 18th through the 22nd, 2024 as American Education Week. Signed this 11th day of November, 2024. And thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for staying too. Okay, item number 9, general board business, approval of policy JHCEB. I just want to point out one change on this policy from what was printed last week, and that is at the top of page 3, it read last week, weekly checks by the school nurse or other designee will be documented to ensure the medication is within the expiration date and ready for use. Once consulted with the nurses, they looked at the expiration dates. They are 3 years out. So weekly checking those is kind of a redundant, a waste of time kind of thing. So that's been changed to 6-month checks. So I just want to point that out before we move to approve that. Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and we need to come back to the resolution just a minute, but we don't have let's do the resolution. We need a motion to vote to approve the proclamation for American Education Week.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schumacher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign? Motion passes. So we have passed that proclamation. Okay, then moving back to the general board business, that's the only change on that policy, opiate antagonist. That's one of those that has to be through because of the timeline legal requirement. So all in favor of policy JHCEV opiate antagonist?
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mrs. Thompson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign? Motion passes. Okay, the item number 10, these are all for board information. So A is policy KD, the public participation at board meetings. B is policy BF, board policy development. C is policy BF-R, board policy development process. D is policy BFB, policy adoption. And E is policy GDBD, support staff leaves and absences. So those are all for board information, and they will be on the next month's agenda for approval. Item number 11 is the vacancy list, so that's there for your inspection. V is the October 2024 Head Start Governing Board and Policy Council Monthly Report. So that finishes 11. Before we go into executive session, I'd like to ask for a point of personal privilege. It has been both my honor and my privilege to serve our students, our staff, and the community of Rock Springs over this past few years. And I want to thank everyone for that opportunity. So we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Wright. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Schumacher. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. We are now in executive session for legal and personnel matters. I do not anticipate any action upon our return. I'll entertain a motion to return from executive session back to the regular meeting. It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second? Second, Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And a motion to adjourn. Okay, it's moved by Mr. Wright. Is there a second? Second, Mrs. Summers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed by same sign. Motion passes. We are adjourned.